34, which is completely redid the financial reporting model for governments, what happened was that, tell me one thing, if you look around in a town, what do you think some of the largest investments of the government are in a town? Is it the municipal building, or are they roads and all the infrastructure that's in the town? Right? It's all the infrastructure and types of items like that. So infrastructure items are very important. There was a big discussion very early on where this financial reporting model was being discussed to forget about the infrastructure altogether because there's so much of it. But because of its material nature, they decided to include the infrastructure asset and to record them in the government-wide statements. Okay. You can depreciate everything, but with infrastructure assets, you have an option. And this is the option. The option is, and I'll give you an example. Think about infrastructure assets in a town worth $10 million. And let's say you said 40 years even. Well, that's $250,000 of depreciation every year. And some public entities were reluctant to record that kind of depreciation. I mean, that's crazy. $250,000 of depreciation for a little town. It will, everything else will become irrelevant because the depreciation expense will be so much. So what GASB did was it gave them an option. What it said was, you have an option. You can depreciate it, or you can maintain that infrastructure asset. If you maintain it properly, and I'll define what properly is, you don't have to depreciate it. So for instance, in that example which I just gave you, if it costs you $100,000 to maintain your infrastructure assets every year, that gets expensed and you don't have to record depreciation at all. That's called the modified approach. Now it's interesting because when you look around, especially now when you're driving on the roads, you see what? Lots of potholes. Last week I was in Nevada, and I said, where are the potholes? I was in northern Nevada, but I said, where are they? And you get to see the condition of our infrastructure compared to other parts of the country. It's really beaten up here. Okay? So GASB has said you don't have to depreciate it if you do the following. You have to have an asset management system. You have to keep an up-to-date inventory. You have to record the condition of your assets. And you have to maintain them. You have to record the condition in terms of a scale. It could be 1 to 5, 1 to 10, whatever you come up with, and you have to maintain it. If you do all of those and you maintain the infrastructure asset, you don't have to depreciate your infrastructure asset. Yeah?
So under the modified approach, you would record it also in the general fund?
The expenditure would be recorded. Yeah. 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 It would be recorded. Okay. It's very, very, anybody else have any question, any observations? I know it's early, but this is, as I said, you need to understand this only applies to infrastructure assets only. And these are the conditions. If you don't meet these conditions, you have to start depreciating. So if you are the auditor for a government and you went out and you asked for these questions and you didn't, and the response came back, well, the roads are worse today than they were last year. Trouble. It means something is wrong. Okay? Yeah?
How do they determine if things are properly maintained?
Very good question, actually. And that's why what you need to do is, it's usually engineering reports on the condition. So you have an engineer who prepares and assigns a scale of its condition. And that engineer is rehired every 3 to 5 years to do a reassessment. And that's how that's done. It's not, accountants don't do it. It's usually an engineer who comes in and does that. Yeah.
So if the engineer comes in and says that they haven't maintained it
Yes.
by not depreciating it, you have to depreciate
Yes, you have to go back and
the
start
time
Yep. Yep.
time it was there.
Yep. You have to start depreciating the asset itself. Now, some people like to depreciate assets. And it's interesting because some do, especially those which run a lot of business type of activities, because they want to show the use of the asset. So they do. Some people do that. Okay. And so it's all about documentation. I mention this to you because, you know, if you ever, some of you will become auditors, hopefully, and some of you will have government clients. And when you go out, this is what you'll be faced with. This is exactly what you will see in your assignments. And this will be a question if you're running an audit. This is a question which comes up every year. You know, you'll ask the official and they'll say, oh, you know, they're just fine. Everything's fine. We had, you know, things were really bad. We're going to fix it this year. But you have to start thinking now, what do you do now, you know? Okay, let's take a look at some journal entries now.